Hello and welcome to the CSN3M podcast. I am your host, Andrew Wade, with Case Specific Nutrition. On this channel, we focus on mentoring, mindsets, myth busting, all as they pertain to health and nutrition. Today's category falls under the topic of myth busting. We are going to be discussing alcohol metabolism. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter episode compared to some of our previous, but it's definitely a very popular discussion that I have with clients on a pretty regular basis. I have multiple drawings on scratch pads on my office at the Baum Boulevard location and at our Plum location. It's obviously a big point of discussion amongst people, particularly in the United States, I think, as drinking has become more and more accepted, but then also, I think, abused in a lot of ways. But one of the things to understand, right, is most people have a couple random phrases that they toss around about alcohol that means more than they know. And so one of the things I hear people talk about is it takes about an hour to metabolize one alcoholic drink. And so, the thought behind that being our metabolism is doing something with that beverage and it takes about an hour to process it. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of give you a brief explanation, kind of break down some of the science background and sort of show you what we mean when we say that. So our body uses energy, and most of us here in the CSN family are probably aware of the macronutrients, the carbohydrates, the fats, and the protein. And what defines a macronutrient is really that it's able to be used for caloric expense, which means our body can take it, it can put it through a process in our liver, it can turn it into ATP, which is used as energy, and then our muscles or our brain or our organs can utilize that ATP as energy. That produces heat, and then we outlet our energy in the form of heat. That heat is measured in the form of calories, because a calorie is the amount of heat required to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius in temperature. So there's a random fact you probably didn't know. We don't actually eat calories, we expend calories. We feed ourselves macronutrients, which our body then breaks down and turns into our caloric expense. So next little known fact, alcohol is technically a macronutrient in that our body can utilize it as energy. It puts it through the same process in our liver. If you think back to chemistry, particularly if you had chemistry in college or potentially even physiology, it takes it through the Krebs cycle. And the Krebs cycle is what our body does to basically turn our macronutrients into a usable form of energy known as acetyl-CoA, which enters the Krebs cycle and then creates ATP, which is our body's usable cellular energy. So the reason that alcohol is toxic, right, which most people always talk about, alcohol is a toxin, is because in the step before it enters the Krebs cycle, it actually becomes acetone. And acetone is not a good thing for our body. It is toxic in high concentrations. And the reason our body metabolizes it is because our body then puts acetone through the Krebs cycle and makes ATP out of it. And so when we talk about our body metabolizing alcohol, it is actually using the same metabolism that processes your apple or processes your steak, if it's going to use some of those fats and protein sources as energy. The downside of that is that when your body is utilizing alcohol inhibits the use of carbs, fat, and protein. So a way to think about it is when alcohol is in your system, so when you are drinking, when you are intoxicated, your body has to use the alcohol as energy. You are literally running on alcohol. You are fueling your body with alcohol. And while you are intoxicated, while your liver is processing the alcohol to get rid of the acetone to prevent you from dying of poison, it is using that alcohol as your energy, which means the carbohydrates and fats and proteins are not being utilized, which is part of the reason why when people drink particularly a lot, and they eat food with that alcohol. So we have, the big, large drinking night out paired with a large meal out. Our body has a propensity to store those things. So we have a tendency to store our carbohydrates and store our fats that we eat when we're intoxicated because our body is using a different form of energy. And so that's part of the reason why when you consume alcohol, going out to, having a big meal with heavy drinks as well as heavy meals, we can see that a lot of people will gain weight very aggressively. Part of the reason the freshman 15 exists in college is in large part because of the presence of alcohol paired with late night eating. And think about the foods that we tend to consume alcohol with, right? Pizza, wings, different types of dips and nachos and chips and appetizers, all things that are quite delicious, but also are very calorically dense. And so we're basically flooding our body with a ton of energy, and then we're flooding it with a toxin, and that toxin is preventing us from using that energy, which sets us up to store it. So there you have it. When you metabolize alcohol, you are using the same system that your carbohydrates, fats, and proteins utilize, and you are processing a toxin, and that sets you up to not be able to use those nutrients, which increases the likelihood of weight gain associated to alcohol. My dietitian advice is one of the obvious ones would be to drink in moderation. One of my most common discussion points is to drink whatever you sip the slowest and enjoy the slowest. So a lot of people will sip a glass of wine, which is much better than taking shots, because shots, you just pile them up, where a glass of wine may last you a period of an hour or more. For those of you who like hard liquor on the rocks and can sip on that over an evening, that's not a bad idea. Things like beer tend to be consumed very quickly because they are diluted and watered down, and so we drink them like we drink water. So drinking whatever you drink the slowest is usually the best idea. And then from there, keeping in mind that while you are intoxicated, your body does not technically need all of those nachos and wings and hoagies that you want to be consuming alongside it. That's more your brain choosing to celebrate because it's being slightly inhibited in terms of logic by the alcohol itself. So there you have it, folks. Alcohol metabolism as a part of your overall health and wellness picture. I hope you can use this information to your liking and find some creative ways to include alcohol as a part of your enjoyment with this in mind. Thanks again for listening. Please subscribe to our channel and share on your favorite media, hashtagging Spread the Health. We are a part of the Spread the Health campaign here, and we ask you to do your part in spreading the health by subscribing and sharing our podcast. For more case-specific nutrition content, you can follow us on all social media at Case Specific Nutrition. You can check out our website at casespecificnutrition.com, and we will be back next week with another CSN3M Mindset Monday.